I never thought moving off campus would be the thing that nearly broke me. It was the end of summer 2016. I was 20, a sophomore at Onondaga State University in Syracuse, the kind of upstate town where the snow sticks by Halloween and the wind has teeth. I'd made it through freshman year in the dorms. Those claustrophobic concrete cinder blocks they dress up with posters of community and scented plug-ins that never quite kill the mildew smell. After 2 semesters of waking up to someone else's alarm, fighting for showers and praying no one stole your laundry, I was done. I needed out. We all did. The idea of renting a house off campus felt like freedom, independence, a rite of passage. Me and 3 girls I'd met in the dorms, people I trusted enough to split rent with, signed a lease on a squat beige 2-story place on Hemlock Street, about a mile from campus. It wasn't much. The siding was peeling, the gutters sagged, and the place creaked like it had opinions. But it was ours. There was me, Rachel Donnelly, psychology major, part-time barista, youngest of 3, cautious but always pretending not to be. Then there was Sierra, my freshman roommate, a practical nursing student with a dry wit and a low tolerance for drama. She kept her closet color-coded and labeled her leftovers like we were living in a lab. Next was Naomi, who I didn't know as well, but who made everyone feel like they were her best friend. She had this warm laugh and a way of tilting her head when you spoke, like you were saying something worth hearing. And finally, there was Blair. Blair Colson was the wild card. She was the last to join us. Someone Naomi had met through the student government. She was tall, effortlessly pretty, and talked fast, like her thoughts were always a half step ahead of her mouth. Blair could be magnetic in that way people are when you don't know whether to be drawn to them or cautious of them. At first it was good, better than good. We bought cheap furniture from Facebook Marketplace and built it with wine and YouTube tutorials. We burned frozen pizzas, danced barefoot in the kitchen, stayed up late gossiping about boys, professors, and whatever new show was trending. We left our front door open during warm afternoons and turned the house into a home. But the cracks started early. They were small at first. Blair never did her share of the cleaning, and she'd go through your stuff without asking. Just little things. Your mascara, your leftovers, your charger. Then there were the noises. I'd hear her pacing in the hallway after midnight, muttering to herself, or just humming. Not music, just a single note, drawn out and low like a warning. I told myself I was overthinking it. College stress made everyone weird. Then she stopped sleeping. Sierra was the first to say something. "She's up all night," she whispered one morning while we made coffee. "Like every night." I woke up at 3 a.m. and she was just sitting on the floor in the living room, staring at the wall. Naomi brushed it off. "She probably just has insomnia. Midterms are rough." But it wasn't midterms. It was September. One night I woke up to footsteps outside my door. I figured someone was grabbing water or hitting the bathroom, but the steps stopped right outside my room and didn't move. I stared at the ceiling, frozen. Then I heard a soft knock. Not the kind you do when you want someone to open the door. The kind you do when you want to see if they're awake. I didn't answer. Eventually the footsteps moved on. When I asked Blair about it the next day, she just smiled. "Must have been one of you sleepwalking." None of us sleepwalked. We tried to keep things normal. Parties, classes, study sessions. But Blair's behavior got harder to ignore. She stopped going to class entirely. Her room reeked of incense and something sour. She started talking about things that didn't make sense. Strange theories about people watching her through their electrical outlets, how she could hear the radio when it wasn't on. "I'm telling you," she said one night, eyes wide and unblinking. "They've been watching me since I was 13. They implanted a transmitter in my molars. My dentist was part of it." Naomi laughed, thinking it was a joke. Blair didn't laugh back. We should have done something then. Called someone. Told her parents. But we didn't want to overreact. We told ourselves it was just stress. Maybe weed paranoia. Everyone was anxious. Everyone got weird sometimes. But there's weird, and then there's dangerous. It was the week before Halloween when everything finally snapped. We'd thrown a little get-together. A few friends, some drinks, nothing wild. Blair had been quiet all night, sitting in the corner, watching everyone. Around 11 p.m., Naomi came up to me and said, "I think she's mad at me. I borrowed her hairbrush earlier. Maybe she's upset." I shrugged. She didn't say anything. But Blair didn't need to say anything. Her eyes followed Naomi the way a cat watches a mouse. Calm, patient, waiting. Around midnight, the party thinned out. Sierra and I started cleaning. Naomi disappeared upstairs. Blair stood in the living room, unmoving, staring at the half-empty red cups like they'd insulted her. "You should all leave," she said suddenly. Sierra blinked. "Blair, everyone's already gone." She turned slowly, smiled too wide. "Not them, you." We both froze. She laughed. "Kidding. God, you guys are so serious." But it didn't feel like a joke. At around 1:30 a.m., I went up to my room. I brushed my teeth, locked my door, something I'd never done before, and slid into bed. I couldn't sleep. Every sound felt amplified. The wind, the fridge, a creak in the hallway. Then came the screaming. It wasn't loud, and not at first. Just this sharp, muffled sobbing that made my heart pound in my chest. I jumped up, flung open my door. Sierra was already out there, her face pale. "It's Naomi," she whispered. We ran to her room. She was crouched in the corner, arms wrapped around herself, shaking. "She came in," she sobbed. "I locked the door and she had a key. I don't know how. She stood over me, just, watching." Blair was gone by the time we checked the hallway. We found her in the kitchen 10 minutes later. She was barefoot, humming, carving something into the linoleum floor with a paring knife. Shapes, circles, strange lines. Her eyes were blank. "Blair," I said gently, "what are you doing?" She didn't look up. "Making it clean, making it safe." Sierra stepped forward. "You need help. Let's talk to someone, okay? Your mom, maybe?" Blair smiled. "I killed her last night." We didn't know if it was a joke. She kept carving. We locked ourselves in my room and called campus security. They arrived with a mental health responder. Blair didn't resist. She just stood up, handed them the knife, and said, "I don't belong here anymore." She was taken in for psychiatric evaluation. We later learned she hadn't killed anyone. Her mom was fine. She was in the middle of a full-blown psychotic episode, exacerbated by untreated schizophrenia and what they suspected was meth use. The drugs she'd been getting weren't just weed or Adderall. She was experimenting, chasing clarity, trying to silence voices that had been with her for years. The university placed her on medical leave. Her parents took custody. We never saw her again. We finished the semester, but the house didn't feel like home anymore. We moved out in December. I still have nightmares. Not about the night she carved the floor, but about the way she looked at us sometimes, like we were already dead, like she could see something we couldn't. I think about Blair often, about how easily someone can slip between the cracks, how we laughed when we should have listened, how we excused what we were too scared to confront. And I think about that night, Naomi curled in the corner, the knife, the humming. Hemlock Street was just a house, but sometimes a house remembers what happened inside it, and so do we. Story 2. I was 33 when I moved in with a stranger. Not because I wanted to, not because it was some fun new chapter after divorce. It was because life doesn't care how much effort you've put into building stability. It can rip it away anyway, slowly, like wallpaper peeling off in the corners of a damp apartment. Until a few months before that, I was married. Lived in a craftsman-style bungalow just off Alberta Street in Portland. Taught high school English, grilled on weekends, planted herbs that always died by June. My wife Lainey was a nurse. We weren't picture perfect. We bickered about chores, ignored each other over dinner, grew tired in that quiet way couples sometimes do. But I thought we were safe. Then one day she told me she didn't love me anymore. Just like that. Not during a fight, not with tears, just a cold morning and cold coffee and a sentence that left a crater in my life. The divorce was amicable, which is a funny word for something that guts you. I moved out, took the car, left the couch, slept on a friend's futon for a while, then in my car for a week. I couldn't bring myself to go home to my folks in Reno. Felt like I'd be walking back into adolescence with my tail tucked between my legs. I was still teaching, barely. My contract was year to year now. Enrollment was down. Rumors about cuts were flying. The district held on to me out of habit, not necessity. That's when I found the Craigslist ad. Furnished room in quiet house, private bath, month to month, $700, all utilities included. Ideal for graduate students or working professionals. I must have read it 10 times. That price was insane. Portland isn't Manhattan, but anything under $1,000 for a private bath and no lease? It screamed scam. But I emailed anyway. A man named Richard replied within an hour. Still available. Can show it this evening. House is in Southeast. Quiet neighborhood. Let me know. I agreed, though every part of me screamed not to. When you're desperate, instinct becomes a luxury. The house was on Southeast 42nd Avenue, tucked between two giant, leaning pines. It was a gray two-story with white trim and a porch swing that creaked gently in the breeze. Not fancy, but not falling apart either. Richard was maybe 60, slim, with wireframe glasses and soft features. He looked more like a retired librarian than a landlord. He smiled, introduced himself with a gentle handshake, and ushered me inside. The room was on the main floor, spacious, wood floors, high ceiling, queen bed, desk, private bath attached. There was even a mini fridge in the corner. It smelled faintly of cedar and cleaning supplies. It's yours if you want it, Richard said, month to month. No deposit. I just ask that you're respectful of noise. I asked about the other tenants. One on the top floor, grad student, keeps to herself. The basement's rented too, but you probably won't cross paths. He has his own entrance. I should have asked more. I should have seen how weird it was that a room like this was going for $700 in a neighborhood where studios cost twice that. But all I saw was shelter, a door I could lock, a place to stop sleeping in parking lots. I moved in the next morning. The first week passed uneventfully. I'd wake at 6, drive to work, try to wrangle distracted teenagers through Steinbeck or Baldwin, come home, heat up frozen pasta, listen to podcasts. Sometimes I'd hear footsteps overhead or the faint muffled drone of a movie upstairs, but mostly it was quiet. A relief. I met the upstairs tenant on day 3. Her name was Danny. She was in her late 20s, tattooed arms and dark-rimmed glasses, studying psychology at PSU. Nice to meet someone normal, she said when I bumped into her by the mailbox. Richard's chill. The house is a little weird, but nothing awful. What do you mean, weird? She shrugged. Just has a vibe, I guess. Old plumbing, drafts, that kind of thing. She didn't mention the basement. I didn't think much about it at first. The only signs of the tenant below were the occasional echo of heavy boots and a strange mechanical whirring sound that buzzed up through the vents late at night. It sounded like a space heater or a fan. Never loud. Just constant. Then one night, I woke around 3 a.m. to the sound of metal scraping. It was faint, distant, like something being dragged across cement. I sat up, heart thumping, straining to hear. Then it stopped. I lay back down, told myself it was nothing. The next morning, Richard was watering the lawn when I left for work. I hesitated, then asked, "Hey, do you know what that sound was last night? Like scraping metal?" He looked up slowly. "The house is old, it settles. Pipes shift." "Right, yeah, just curious." He smiled too tightly and went back to the hose. The first truly strange moment happened a few nights later. I was brushing my teeth, door cracked, listening to a playlist. Then I heard it. Footsteps outside my door. Not just passing by, stopping, pausing. I froze, toothbrush halfway to my mouth. Then came a knock. Slow, deliberate. 3 times. I stepped out, opened the door. No one was there. I looked down the hall. Nothing. Not even a creak of a retreating footstep. I told myself it was Danny. Maybe she needed something. Maybe she knocked on the wrong door. Maybe she got embarrassed and walked away. But something about it felt off. When I saw her the next day, I asked. She shook her head. "I wasn't even home last night. Study group ran late. Got in around 1. I nodded, said nothing more. That night I started locking my door. Then came the moment I met him. I was making coffee Saturday morning when the basement door creaked open. He stepped into the hallway without looking up. Tall, thin, wearing a brown hoodie, hood pulled up even indoors. His skin was pale, almost sickly. Long fingers, dirty nails. He didn't look at me, just shuffled past like I wasn't there. "Hey," I offered. Nothing. Just the sound of his socks dragging against the floor. "Everything all right?" I asked, a little louder. He stopped, turned just enough for me to see one eye peeking from beneath the hood. "You shouldn't leave your light on at night," he said, voice low and dry. "It makes the house confused." Then he walked out the front door. I stared after him, skin crawling. It makes the house confused? What the hell did that mean? Things escalated after that. Small items began to go missing. My phone charger, a pair of socks, a bottle of Tylenol. I thought I was misplacing things. I hoped I was. Then one day I came home and found my closet door open. I never leave it open. Inside, tucked into the corner, was a piece of paper. One of mine, torn from the notebook I kept in the drawer. Scrawled across it in jittery handwriting, "The door downstairs should stay shut." That night I barely slept. I tried to talk to Richard again, told him what was happening. He nodded patiently but brushed it off. "The man downstairs has lived here for years," he said. "He's private, quiet, a little strange, sure, but harmless." Did he leave this note in my room? I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation. I stared at him. "Do you actually believe that?" He didn't answer, just said he'd talk to the tenant. A few days later, I found the door to the basement unlocked. It was always locked, always. I hesitated. Then stupidly, I opened it. The air that hit me was heavy, warm, and metallic, like old pennies and sweat. The stairs creaked as I descended. There were no lights, just a faint glow coming from a room at the end of the hall. I crept toward it. What I saw still clings to the edges of my sleep. The basement was filled with machines, old computer towers stacked like stone altars. Cords snaked across the floor like vines. The air pulsed with electricity. And in the center of the room sat the tenant. He wasn't wearing the hoodie. He wore a black t-shirt, hands twitching over a keyboard. But it wasn't what he looked like that froze me. It was the wall behind him, dozens of Polaroids, taped in neat rows. They were pictures of doors, every door in the house. Mine, Danny's, the front door, the basement door. All of them photographed, sometimes from the inside, sometimes from the outside, sometimes open. I stepped back, heart pounding. The man turned slowly and stared at me. "You're not supposed to be down here," he said. I bolted. I moved out the next day, called in sick, packed everything I owned into my car, slept at a rest stop on I-5 and cried harder than I had in months. I found a sublet the next week. Tiny studio, drafty, no oven, but it was mine. I don't know what was wrong with that man, if he was sick or dangerous or just lonely in some broken way. I don't know what Richard knew or ignored. I never reported it, never called the cops. I just left. Sometimes I still dream of the sound that came through the vents, low, mechanical, inhuman. Sometimes I still lock my bedroom door, just in case. Story 3, I was 21 when I first moved into Redfield Hall. It was an old brick building with steam radiators that hissed at night and windows that rattled when the wind picked up. Redfield was technically on campus, Keystone University in central Indiana, but it sat on the far edge of the grounds, past the outdated student union and the abandoned tennis courts no one had used in years. My dad used to call places like that the leftovers. It wasn't where the freshmen wanted to be, or the athletes, or anyone who still thought college was some kind of party. I didn't care. I wasn't there to make friends or decorate my door with glitter letters. I was there because I'd lost 3 years of my life taking care of my mother while she died from ALS. I didn't want sympathy. I didn't want attention. I just wanted a bed, a schedule, and a door I could close. They assigned me room 312, top floor, left corner. I'd listed that I preferred a quiet roommate, someone serious about school, non-smoker, no pets. Pretty standard. What I got was Aaron, When I showed up with my duffel and two plastic tubs, he was already there. He'd claimed the window bed and was sitting cross-legged on the mattress, folding clothes into tight rectangles. He didn't look up when I walked in, just said, "You Ian?" "Yeah," I said. "You Aaron?" "Yeah." He finally looked at me, eyes pale blue and glassy. "That's yours?" He meant my stuff. "Yeah, just clothes and books mostly." He nodded. "Good, I don't like clutter." That made two of us. Aaron had a quiet voice, clean habits, and a way of organizing his side of the room that felt almost military. He had a jar of vitamins lined up on the dresser, a pair of black running shoes set precisely under his bed, and a desk lamp that he never turned past the lowest setting. He didn't hang up posters or bring in a mini fridge. He read philosophy books and took cold showers, and every night at exactly 10:45, he laid down in bed, turned to the wall and said, "Good night." He was the perfect roommate for about 2 weeks. Then little things started to shift. One morning I woke up and his bed sheets were stripped, just bare mattress, even though his laundry hamper was still full. That night he slept on the floor. "Bed broken?" I asked. He shook his head. "No." "Okay." Another night I came back from studying at the library and found the window open, even though it was 37 degrees outside. He was sitting cross-legged again, but this time he was facing the open air like he was waiting for something. When I shut it, he flinched. "I was using that," he said softly. "It's freezing, man." He didn't say anything after that. I tried not to overthink it. Everyone's got their quirks. I didn't want to be the guy who called in a roommate switch just because someone was a little odd. Besides, he didn't bother me. Not really. He didn't steal, didn't throw parties, didn't smell like weed or booze. But then there were the voices. It started as whispers. I thought maybe he was talking on the phone late at night. Nothing I hadn't dealt with before. But the whispers weren't one-sided. It wasn't just him. Sometimes I'd hear responses. Low murmurs just beyond the edge of comprehension. I brought it up once. "You have a headset or something?" I asked, trying to keep it casual. Aaron blinked. "No." "You been on the phone at night?" "No." "Okay, I heard voices, that's all." He looked at me for a long moment. "Sometimes I talk in my sleep," he said. "Right, that's probably it." But it wasn't. The whispers weren't sleep speak. They had rhythm, cadence. Sometimes I'd hear my own name in them. Ian. I kept telling myself I was overreacting, that my brain was filling in the gaps. But then things started to move. My textbook went missing. Advanced cognitive psych, a heavy spiral-bound beast I couldn't afford to replace. I found it 2 days later inside Aaron's dresser, tucked between sweaters. When I asked him about it, he didn't even try to deny it. "You must have put it there," he said flatly. "I didn't." He didn't argue. He just blinked. That weekend, Gavin, a guy from my writing workshop, invited me to hang out, said a few people were watching movies in his suite and eating cheap pizza. I said yes. When I got back around midnight, the lights in the room were off. My bed looked untouched, but Aaron's bed had been flipped. Mattress leaning against the wall. Dresser drawers pulled out and scattered across the floor. Aaron was standing barefoot in the middle of it, whispering. I opened the door slowly. "Hey." He froze. "You good?" I asked. "They said they don't like the bed," he said, voice low and shaky. "Said it watches." "Who?" I asked. His eyes flicked to me. "The people outside." I stood in the doorway for a long second, heart suddenly pounding. I didn't know what to say. Was he schizophrenic? Having an episode? Was I in danger? "You want me to call someone?" I asked. Like campus security?" Aaron shook his head violently. "Number no police. They're worse. They don't help. They never help." I backed out, slept on the floor in Gavin's room again. Didn't even tell him why. The next day, Aaron was gone. His mattress was back in place, his drawers neatly shut, all his vitamins lined up in perfect order again, like nothing had happened. He came back around dinner, walked in while I was at my desk, and sat on the edge of his bed like nothing was off. He looked at me and smiled. Actually smiled. "Did you sleep okay?" he asked. I didn't answer. By the following week, I'd started keeping my shoes and wallet in my backpack, slept with it next to my bed. I even bought one of those cheap rubber door wedges off Amazon and kept it under the frame when he was out. Still, it didn't feel like enough. One night in early October, I woke up to a sound, like scratching, light and rhythmic. I sat up and turned toward it. Aaron was standing in the corner. He had something in his hands. I sat still. The room was dark, only the amber street lamp outside casting shapes across the floor. He didn't move, didn't speak. I reached for my phone slowly. The second my hand touched it, he turned around. "Don't call anyone," he said. My throat went dry. I wasn't. "They're almost here," he whispered. "Who?" He tilted his head, like a child studying a fly. "You'll see." I reported it the next morning. The RA looked uncomfortable, said she'd talked to housing. Campus counseling called me a few hours later and offered me a transfer. They said they'd talk to Aaron separately. I didn't ask what they found. They moved me to a different dorm. Sanders Hall, newer, brighter. Carpeted halls and proper thermostats. My new roommate was quiet, friendly, played guitar. I wanted to forget. I almost did. Until 3 months later, right before winter break, I was walking through the library's basement archives looking for a book on early American psych studies. The lower floors were mostly empty during finals week. That's why I heard the voice so clearly. A whisper, not loud, just enough to feel like breath in the ear. "Ian." I froze, turned. No one was there. I checked the aisles, the reading rooms, even the hallway. Empty. I didn't sleep that night. I told myself it was stress, that I was just overtired. That's what people do, right? We rationalize, we smooth the edges so we can function. It worked. For a while, until last summer, 3 years after it all happened, when my roommate Gavin sent me a text. "Bro, you remember your old roommate? Aaron. Look at this." He sent a screenshot of a local Indiana news report. A house in Greensburg had been raided after neighbors complained about the smell. Police found human remains in the basement, several bodies, all in various stages of decomposition. They arrested a man in his 30s, identified as Aaron Vale. Same face, same pale blue eyes. He'd been squatting in the abandoned house for over a year. They said he'd been communing with spirits. I stared at the article for a long time. There was one quote that stuck with me, a line he apparently wrote in a notebook they found during the investigation. "When people want you bad enough, they find you, and sometimes they never let go." I deleted the screenshot, but I still hear it sometimes. Not the voice, not anymore. Just the silence before it, like a breath waiting to become a whisper, and the sense that someone, somewhere, is still watching. Story 4. I was 22 when I moved into the house on Holloway Street. It was August, hot, humid, and the kind of muggy that made your clothes cling the second you stepped outside. The house wasn't anything special, pale green with white trim, and a front porch that sagged like an old man's spine. 4 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, a kitchen that always smelled like something burning no matter how clean it was, and rent split 4 ways. $385 each. Cheap even for a college town like Elmridge, Pennsylvania. I'd lived in worse. Back then, I was just trying to finish school. I transferred into Elmridge College after doing 2 years at a community college near Harrisburg. My mom got sick during my senior year of high school, and I stayed behind to help. Didn't even apply anywhere. Just worked odd jobs, grocery store, gas station, auto shop, anything that paid. So by the time I got to Elmridge, I wasn't like the other juniors. I was older by a couple years, a little more tired, a little more focused. I moved in with 3 guys I found on the student housing board. Mason, who was the leaseholder, and kind of treated the whole house like it was his kingdom. Noah, soft-spoken, always wore socks with sandals, brilliant in a quiet way. And Devin, who was, well, Devin. The kind of guy who could drink 4 beers, bomb an exam, and still find a way to make you laugh until your ribs hurt. We weren't best friends, but we clicked fast enough. Had our little routines. Game nights, pizza from Lorenzo's down the street, music drifting through the walls from Noah's vinyl collection. Things were good, simple, until we brought in a 5th. His name was Tyler, Mason's idea. We'd been talking about the extra room, the small one off the living room that technically didn't count as a bedroom because it didn't have a closet. We used it for junk. Broken lamp, an old bookshelf we never assembled, a beanbag that leaked foam like snow whenever you sat on it. One night, Mason said, "That night I came home and found my phone on the couch. I never leave it there. When I opened my messages, the voicemail was gone, deleted, permanently. I stared at my screen for a long time, then marched down to the spare room. The door was closed. I knocked once. He opened it like he was expecting me. 'You delete something?' I asked. He didn't answer, just smiled. I took a step inside, trying to keep my hands from shaking. The room stank, like sweat, mold, and something sour. There were no sheets on the mattress, just stains. On the floor, I saw my hoodie, the one I hadn't worn in a week. 'You've been in my room?' He shrugged. 'Maybe your room's been in me.' 'What the expletive does that mean?' He didn't answer, just turned his back and sat on the mattress, like I wasn't even there. I reported it to Mason, told him we needed to get him out, but Tyler didn't leave. That weekend we had a house meeting. He didn't show, stayed in his room. When Mason knocked, he didn't answer. When Devin tried the knob, it was locked, from the inside. That night I woke up to whispering, low, garbled, like someone reciting words through a wall. I got up, quietly walked toward the living room. The door to Tyler's room was cracked, light flickering inside. Not electric, candlelight. I heard him muttering, can't go back. Keep them asleep. Keep them shut. I leaned closer, and he stopped. Silence. Then he said, clear as anything, I know you're there. I backed up, went to my room, locked the door, didn't sleep. The next morning, Mason called a locksmith. We gave Tyler an ultimatum. He didn't respond. The locksmith came at noon. Took 20 minutes to drill the lock. When we opened the door, he was gone. Just gone. The window was open, screen cut. His mattress was soaked. Not with water, with something dark and sticky. A pile of blackened wax sat in the corner with burnt matches. And on the wall, drawn in something that looked like ash or charcoal. You sleep too deep to notice. We called the cops. They found nothing. No drugs, no ID, nothing to track. He'd used a fake last name. His number was a burner. Mason swore he was a real guy. Had pictures from high school, old Facebook posts. But the account was wiped 2 days later. Vanished. After that, no one slept right. Noah dropped out at the end of the semester. Devin moved into his girlfriend's place. Mason started carrying a knife, clipped to his pocket at all times. I stayed until May. I had nowhere else to go. But every night I locked my door, double-checked the windows, woke up at 3 a.m., sweating, convinced I heard footsteps in the hall. It's been 3 years. Sometimes I still wake up that way, and I swear, just once, I heard a whisper through the vent. You left the door open. Story 5, I was 16 the first time I stayed the night at my sister's house, and I remember thinking it felt like the safest place in the world. Our home in East Graybridge was a storm, one that never stopped rumbling. My mom had been with a guy named Rick for almost 2 years by then, long enough for his true colors to bleed through the polite small talk he reserved for the neighbors. At home, he was loud, controlling, sometimes cruel. He didn't hit us, but he didn't have to. The way he looked at me like I was a problem. The way he made my mom cry without raising his voice. I learned to walk quietly, keep my head down, and pretend everything was fine. My older sister Avery had moved out when she was 19. She got engaged to a guy named Cole, and they rented a house in the west end of town, an old craftsman on Elderberry Street near the college. Avery would pick me up on Fridays when Rick got especially bad. I'd sleep in the small guest room or on the pullout in Cole's office and pretend for 2 days that life was normal, that I had a place I belonged. Their house was shared with 3 other people. Graybridge was a college town and rent was steep, so everyone split the cost. There was Cole's best friend Caleb, who was funny and kind and always made too much pasta. And then there were the quiet ones, Aaron and Elise. Aaron was 27, maybe 28, skinny in that malnourished, vitamin-deficient kind of way. His hair looked like he cut it himself with kitchen scissors. Elise was maybe mid-20s, pale, always barefoot, always wearing the same gray hoodie, even in the summer. She never spoke to me, not once. I used to say hi when I saw her in the kitchen or hallway, but she'd just walk by like I wasn't there. At the time, I didn't think anything of it. I was used to being invisible. Cole told me they found Aaron through Craigslist. Laid back, pays on time, no parties, was how he'd described himself. Elise wasn't on the lease, just started staying over more and more until she never left. They didn't seem dangerous, just awkward. But sometimes I think back on that house, the layout, the shadows, the doors that never quite closed right, and I realize I was never as safe as I thought I was. I stayed there almost every weekend during that spring and summer. I'd help Avery cook dinner. We'd watch dumb horror movies until midnight. Cole would fall asleep on the couch, and I'd sneak into the office and sleep on the futon under the window. The office was downstairs across from the half bath. That bathroom was tiny, just a toilet and a janky old tub that barely drained. There was a full bathroom upstairs, but for some reason, Elise always used the one downstairs. I'd hear her running the water late at night, the sound of her bare feet padding across the wood floor. Once I caught a glimpse of her leaving the bathroom. She stopped at the hallway mirror, just stood there staring at herself for a long time before turning toward Aaron's room. Still, nothing really set off alarms. I was too used to chaos to question quiet. One night in early April, I was pulling a late one, working on a U.S. history paper I'd procrastinated on. Everyone else was upstairs. The house was silent except for the occasional pop from the old furnace. I had my headphones on, music low. The bathroom light across the hall flicked on. The shower started, then stopped. Maybe 10 minutes passed. When I glanced up from my screen, I saw something through the crack in the office door. A face. Elise. She was standing in the hallway completely naked, staring straight through the narrow slit of the door. Her skin looked almost gray in the dim light. Her hair clung to her neck in wet strands. Her expression never changed. Her eyes didn't blink. I froze. "Elise," I whispered, voice barely audible. She turned slowly and walked back down the hall. No words, no acknowledgement. Just disappeared. I told myself I imagined it. I was tired, wired on soda and candy. Maybe she was just walking to her room after a shower. Maybe I caught a weird angle. I didn't tell Avery. I didn't tell anyone. But the next night I wedged a chair in front of the door before I went to sleep. The weirdness didn't stop. A few weeks later, Caleb mentioned something strange over breakfast. "Hey, has anyone else noticed fingerprints on the office window?" Cole frowned. "What kind of fingerprints?" "Outside, like smudged on the glass. They weren't there yesterday." The office window faced the side street, low to the ground, easy to reach. They chalked it up to a kid or someone drunk. Cole installed motion sensor cameras the next day, one facing the office window, one at the front door, and one inside in the hallway near the bathroom, just in case. They never brought it up with Aaron or Elise, said they didn't want to stir drama without proof. That felt fair at the time. By June, I stopped coming around as much. Things had temporarily calmed at home. Rick was on a self-improvement kick, which mostly meant he shouted less and drank green juice. I spent more time with my friends and didn't feel the urgent need to escape every weekend. Until one Saturday when I showed up unannounced. Avery met me at the door. She looked tired, pale. "Aaron and Elise moved out," she said before I even dropped my bag. "Why?" She hesitated, looked over her shoulder. "Because they're fucking weirdos," Cole said from the kitchen, voice hard. "And we should have kicked them out months ago." They didn't explain right away. Just told me they had found something on the cameras. That it had to do with me. That it wasn't safe for me to stay there anymore. But everything was okay now. I pressed. They resisted. It wasn't until a month later, on Avery's porch, with 2 glasses of wine between us, that she told me the whole story. Cole had gone through the hallway footage one night. Just curious. Nothing serious. That's when he saw it. Elise, stepping out of the bathroom. Wet hair, bare feet, standing at the office door, watching. Minutes passed. 5, 10, 15. She didn't move. Just stood there, silent, eyes locked on the door, on me. And it wasn't just once. It was every night. Cole went back through older files. She did it almost every time I stayed over. And the outside camera? It caught Aaron, standing in the shadows, watching through the office window, sometimes at 2 a.m., sometimes earlier. Once he was seen holding his phone, screen facing the glass like he was recording. The footage made them sick. They confronted Aaron and Elise 2 days later. Caleb was there too. Avery was at work. When they burst into Aaron's room, they found something worse. My clothes, shirts I thought I'd lost, folded neatly in a plastic bin under his bed. Drawings, charcoal sketches of me sleeping, some pinned to the wall, one left on the desk, disturbingly accurate, and notes, poems with my name, repetitive phrases about my purity, descriptions of my softness. They didn't show me, said I didn't need to see it. Then came the kitchen footage. Elise, spitting into a soda can I'd left on the table. Aaron, opening my lactose-free milk and pouring in regular dairy milk, laughing silently as he put it back. That was why I'd gotten so sick that one weekend. I thought it was stress, or maybe old takeout. It was them. Cole gave them 2 hours to pack and get out. No cops, just a threat. If you don't leave, we go to the police, and we have everything on video. They left, and that should have been the end. But trauma isn't a clean cut. It's a splinter that festers. That summer, I stopped drinking anything I didn't open myself. I'd gag if I tasted milk. Even now, I flinch when someone knocks too lightly at my door. I never told my friends the full story. When they asked why I was weird about sleepovers or why I wouldn't eat from their fridges, I just said, I had some bad roommates once. The truth is more than that. It was a violation of everything. My safety, my space, my body. And I still think about the what ifs. What if the door hadn't been locked? What if they'd waited until no one was home? What if I had stayed just one more night? Sometimes I wake up at 3 a.m. and think I hear footsteps in the hall. Even now in my apartment on the other side of the country, I check the cameras twice a night. I wedge a chair under the knob when I stay at hotels. I don't trust silence. I don't trust people who watch and never speak. And I don't think I ever will. Story 6. I didn't move to Gray Ridge, Oregon with any dreams of starting over. I wasn't running towards something. I was just trying to stop everything from falling apart. I had $28 in my checking account when I left my last place in Spokane. 2 black trash bags of clothes, a beat-up laptop, and a Honda Civic that should have died 6 days ago. That was what my life had boiled down to by the summer of 2017. I had just broken up with my girlfriend of 4 years after a long, exhausting decline. No fights, no screaming, just apathy, the slow death of something that once mattered. I'd also just been laid off from my warehouse job after the company restructured, which basically meant hiring cheaper labor and dumping people like me. So when I saw a listing for a room in a house in Gray Ridge, cheap rent, flexible move-in, no pets, no drama, I jumped on it. I didn't even care that I'd never heard of the town. I just wanted a quiet place to survive. The listing had been posted by a guy named Eli. Simple black text on a Craigslist ad, room available in quiet neighborhood, $450 per month, looking for a respectful, clean roommate. No parties, no smoking, room available immediately. I messaged him that afternoon and drove down the next morning. Gray Ridge wasn't much to look at. One of those towns you don't realize you've passed through until you're already out of it. Faded brick storefronts, an old train depot converted into a coffee shop, a gas station with a cracked sign that just read, "Stop." Eli's house was tucked away in a cul-de-sac on the west side of town. Clean, almost eerily so. 2 stories, pale green siding, white trim. The lawn was freshly mowed, edged, and the driveway looked like it had been pressure washed that morning. Eli opened the door as I was walking up the path. "Travis?" he said, smiling. "Yeah," I nodded. "Thanks for letting me come on short notice." "No problem," he said. He stepped aside and motioned for me to come in. I got a strange first impression. Eli looked ordinary, mid-30s maybe, average height, brown hair cropped close to his head. He wore a light blue polo shirt tucked into jeans with a brown leather belt. Kind of guy you wouldn't notice twice if you passed him on the street. But his handshake was limp, and he didn't make much eye contact. The house was spotless. Not just clean, sanitized. Every surface gleamed. Hardwood floors so shiny they looked fake. The smell of pine cleaner lingered in the air like it had soaked into the walls. He gave me a quick tour. 3 bedrooms, Eli's, mine, and a guest room. A large kitchen with marble counters, living room with a flat screen mounted to the wall. The hallway bathroom would be mine. He had his own attached to his bedroom. And the basement's off limits, he said, almost like he was reading from a script. I use it for my job. IT consulting stuff. Equipment's sensitive. No problem, I said. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm not a control freak or anything. I just value boundaries. I didn't care. Rent was cheap, the place was clean, and I didn't want to be sleeping in my car again. I moved in that weekend. At first, Eli seemed like an ideal roommate. He was quiet, punctual with bills, and rarely left his room. He cooked his own meals, cleaned up after himself, and never had guests over. He was polite, almost to the point of awkwardness. He'd say things like, "Hope your shift went well," or "Let me know if the water pressure seems off," like he'd memorized a list of polite things to say, but had no natural instinct for small talk. The basement stayed locked, always. There wasn't even a regular doorknob, just a steel deadbolt. The only other entrance was a set of bulkhead doors in the backyard, secured with a thick padlock. I never saw him unlock them, never saw him go in or out. I chalked it up to eccentricity. Maybe he had a server farm or a personal project he didn't want messed with. Tech guys could be weird. Then I started noticing things. It began with sound. Late at night, sometimes 2, 3 in the morning, I'd hear movement. Not footsteps exactly, more like shuffling, dragging, a dull, rhythmic knock. Then silence. One night I woke to what sounded like humming. Low, slow, tuneless. It was coming through the floor vent near my bed. I got up, opened my door. The hallway was dark. "Eli," I whispered. No answer. I stepped closer to the vent. The humming stopped. I went back to bed, told myself it was nothing. Then came the smell. I'd just come home from my shift at the coffee shop. The house smelled like bleach and something else. Something sour, metallic. I walked past the basement door, and it was strongest there. Later, when Eli got home, I casually asked, "You cleaning something down there?" He looked at me frozen. "Just reorganizing some equipment. Smells kind of intense." He smiled, tight, like it hurt. "Chemicals. I wear a mask. You don't have to worry about it." I tried to laugh it off. "Unless you're building a bomb." He didn't laugh, just tilted his head a little and said, "I don't believe in violence. Not the kind people expect, anyway." I didn't know what to say, so I muttered something about taking a shower and walked away. A week later, I came home early. My boss had cut my shift short because of slow foot traffic. Eli wasn't expecting me. His car wasn't in the driveway, but the basement bulkhead was open. Just a crack. I wasn't trying to snoop. I really wasn't. But I walked around the side of the house, looked through the opening. It was dark inside. I smelled something wet, a mix of bleach and iron and mold. There were stains on the concrete floor, brownish, smeared like something had been dragged. I stepped back. The door creaked. I didn't go inside. I couldn't. I just stood there frozen until I heard a car door close behind me. I turned. Eli was standing by his car, holding a plastic grocery bag. "You're home early," he said. "Yeah," I replied, trying to sound casual. Didn't realize the basement door was open. He didn't speak, just stared at me. Then slowly walked past me and shut the bulkhead without a word. That night, the humming returned. After that, things changed. Eli became more present. He started asking me more questions about my work schedule, my sleep habits, if I had any family nearby. Always said with a pleasant tone, but there was something behind his words now. Curiosity with edges. He started cooking more, tried to share meals, kept asking if I wanted wine. I always said no. One night I came home and found my bedroom door open. I always locked it. My laptop had been moved slightly, just enough to notice. My drawers were shuffled. My toothbrush was wet. I confronted him. "Were you in my room?" He looked genuinely confused, or pretended to be. Why would I do that? I don't know, but someone was. He raised his hands. Travis, I wouldn't violate your privacy. I respect your space. I didn't believe him. Not anymore. That night I slept with a steak knife under my pillow. The final straw came 2 days later. I was doing laundry in the garage when I saw a folded tarp half hidden under a pile of blankets. Curious, I pulled it out. It was stained. Not red, brown, dried, crusted in spots. Beneath the tarp was a length of chain, duct tape, zip ties, a clear gallon jug with something oily inside, and a glove. Just one. There was long, dark hair tangled in the fingers. I backed away, heart pounding so loud I thought it might echo. Eli walked in a moment later, holding a basket of towels. Our eyes met. He looked at the glove, the tarp. Then he smiled. Doing some reorganizing? He asked calmly. I nodded. Just thought I'd help. You're a good roommate, he said, setting the basket down. You really are, quiet, clean. You don't ask too many questions. I left that night, didn't pack, didn't say goodbye, just grabbed my wallet, keys and phone, and drove until I hit a Motel 6 3 towns away. I called the police the next morning. An officer took my statement. I gave them the address, his name, Elijah Crane, and told them everything. The smells, the sounds, the tarp, the basement. I expected them to take it seriously, but I never heard back. A week later, I checked the property on Zillow, still listed as for rent. Photos updated, no mention of a basement. Eli was smiling in one of the shots, standing on the porch like nothing had ever happened. Maybe nothing did. Maybe I imagined it all. Maybe he was just a weird guy with an odd hobby, or maybe he was the kind of predator who knew how to blend in. The kind who doesn't need chains or knives because he builds trust first, builds routine, silence. The kind who waits. I haven't gone back, haven't called again. But sometimes, when it's late, and I can't sleep, I wonder if someone else has moved into that room, and if right now they're lying awake in the dark, wondering what that sound is beneath their floor. Story 7, I was never supposed to end up in Briar Hollow. That little pocket of backwoods Tennessee wasn't even on my radar, not when I packed up my car and left Atlanta, not when I burned through the last of my savings bouncing between short-term rentals, and definitely not when I answered that Craigslist ad for a room in a house just outside the city limits. But desperation makes you say yes before your brain has time to scream no. I'd been living out of my car for almost 3 weeks by then. A black Honda Civic with a busted air conditioner and 2 garbage bags worth of clothes stuffed in the trunk. I kept telling myself it was temporary. I'd get back on my feet. I'd find freelance photo gigs again. I'd rebuild. But hope runs dry fast when you're sweating through your clothes in a gas station parking lot, eating peanut butter straight from the jar with a plastic spoon. The ad was simple. Room for rent. $450 per month. Utilities included. Must be okay with dogs. Must be quiet and respectful. Room available immediately. That last word, immediately, stuck with me. I called. A man named Caleb answered. He sounded normal enough. Mid-30s maybe. Soft southern drawl. The kind of guy who probably grew up barefoot on a front porch somewhere. He didn't ask many questions. Just gave me the address, told me to show up before dark, and said the room was mine if I wanted it. I got 4 dogs, he added at the end. Just stay out of their way and they won't bother you. That should have been a red flag. But like I said, desperation. I showed up to the house just before 6 p.m., right as the sun dipped low over the hills. The place was old, 1950s ranch style with peeling green paint and a wraparound porch that sagged in the corners. It sat on a half-acre lot thick with cedar and overgrown grass, surrounded by rusted wire fencing, and a line of crooked pine trees that looked like they'd lean in and whisper if you stood too close. Caleb greeted me at the door in worn jeans and a sleeveless shirt. He looked like a man who knew how to gut a deer and keep quiet about it. You Lindsay? He asked. Yeah, I said, shifting my bag over my shoulder. Come on in then. The inside of the house was dim and smelled faintly of cedar wood and bleach. The floors creaked under every step. My room was at the end of a narrow hall, tiny but clean. A twin bed, a dresser, and a single window that faced the backyard. No lock on the door. I don't keep keys on the bedroom doors, he said. Ain't never needed to. I nodded, biting back the unease. That first night, I barely slept. I could hear the dogs pacing somewhere beyond the walls, heavy nails clicking on the wood, low growls rippling through the silence like warning drums. I didn't see them, but I felt them, watching, waiting. Caleb had rules. Don't feed the dogs. Don't try to pet them. Don't open the door to the basement. Don't go into his room. Ever. He said it all with a smile, like he was explaining how to use the washing machine. Dogs ain't friendly, he said. They trust me and that's about it. You keep to your space, they'll keep to theirs. I thought maybe they were rescues. Maybe they'd been abused. I didn't ask. The first time I saw them up close was 3 days in. I stepped into the kitchen and froze. All four were lined up behind the baby gate at the end of the hall. Big dogs, black coats, muzzles flecked with gray. Not quite shepherds, not quite labs. Something in between. They didn't bark, didn't growl. Just stood there watching. One of them licked its lips. I turned and went back to my room, closed the door and pushed the dresser in front of it. Caleb wasn't exactly friendly, but he wasn't hostile either. He kept to himself, spent most of the day in his room working on his computer. Said he did security systems. Sometimes his girlfriend, Ellie, would stay the night. She was soft-spoken, polite, a little skittish. "You okay staying here?" she asked me one morning when we both reached for the coffee pot. "Yeah," I lied. She gave me a look, like maybe she knew I wasn't, and went back to stirring sugar into her mug. I asked about the dogs once. "They're protective," she said carefully. "Caleb's had them since they were pups." "What breed are they?" She hesitated. "Mostly mixed. He doesn't take them out much. Says they don't do well around strangers." I nodded, trying not to let the unease bubble over. It was like living in a house with something caged, but not quite caged enough. Everything fell apart on a Sunday. I remember the sky was overcast, heavy with that thick southern humidity that makes your skin feel too tight. Caleb knocked on my door mid-morning. "Ellie and me are heading up to see her folks," he said. "Won't be back till late Monday night." He didn't ask if that was okay. Just told me the dogs would be outside. Same rules as always. Don't go near the backyard. Don't go near the basement. I said sure. He smiled like it was all fine. That night the power went out. It started with a flicker. Then everything died. Lights, fridge, the whir of the ceiling fan. I checked my phone. Dead too. I'd left my charger in the car. I tried not to panic. Probably just a blown fuse. But the fuse box was in the basement. I stared at the door Caleb always kept locked and felt that unease come crawling back. Maybe I could wait it out. Go to sleep early. Deal with it in the morning. Then I heard the sound. Glass breaking. I ran to the kitchen. The back door, the one leading to the yard, was wide open. The wind howled through the hole where the glass pane used to be. Shards littered the floor. And there, just beyond the threshold, stood one of the dogs, blood on its muzzle. My heart stopped. It stepped forward, slow and deliberate. I turned and ran. I don't remember reaching my room. Just the sound of claws on wood, the slam of the door, the dresser scraping into place. I pressed my body against the wood and prayed it would hold. Then came the growling. Deep, ragged, not angry, hungry. I backed into the corner, breath heaving. They knew I was alone. I stayed in that room for what felt like hours. The scratching started around midnight, gentle at first like curiosity, then harder, more frantic. I heard them outside my window too, pacing, whimpering. One of them barked once, short and sharp. My phone was dead. No landline. No neighbors for miles. Eventually I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my bag and bolted for the bathroom. There was a tiny window above the toilet, old and narrow, maybe 2 feet wide. I climbed onto the sink, pushed it open, and squeezed through. The edge of the roof scraped my back. My foot slipped. I caught myself with one hand and hauled the rest of my body out. Then I ran, across the shingles, down the back slope, and dropped onto the lawn below. Pain shot through my leg. I hit the ground hard and limped toward the fence. Behind me I heard the howl. They'd seen me. I didn't look back, just climbed the fence, fell into the ditch, and crawled into the trees. I walked until sunrise, miles of dirt and woods in silence, save for the sound of branches cracking behind me. I finally reached a gas station just outside Briar Hollow, collapsed at the door, bleeding and shaking. They called the police, animal control, an ambulance. At the hospital, they found the bite wound, jagged and deep. "You're lucky," the nurse said. "You lost a lot of blood." I didn't feel lucky. Caleb never came back. The cops found the house empty. No sign of Ellie. The dogs were gone too. Basement door wide open. Scratch marks on the walls. Old chains rusted and broken. They found bones down there. Animal mostly. Some, maybe not. No one could prove anything. The house was condemned. I didn't want answers. Not anymore. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment outside Knoxville. Got a job editing product catalogs. Quiet life. Safe. I still can't be around dogs. Even the sound of barking makes my skin crawl. Sometimes I think about Ellie, where she went, what she knew. Sometimes I think about those dogs, whether they were just animals or something else entirely. I don't have nightmares, not exactly, but I keep a lock on every door now, and I never ever leave a window open.